One country, one direction, different speeds. That's the message from the Health Minister as states begin to reopen. Tonight, shops packed, no social distancing. New South Wales reminded we're still in lockdown. No jab, no play. The state government tells the NRL to get in line or forget about a restart. Under the hammer and on the streets, auctions and inspections return. But has real estate now changed forever? Inner city blaze, emergency response as a caravan goes up in flames. White House infections, fears for the president as the coronavirus threat draws near. And graduation celebration, this class of paramedics makes history, strength in numbers in the COVID fight.
Live from Sydney, 7 News with Michael Usher.
Good evening. You'd be forgiven for thinking there'd been a major windback of social distancing rules today, with Boxing Day-style crowds squeezing into reopening shops. But the state government standing firm against a federal timeline to ease restrictions, insisting it will not be rushed into any decisions.
COVID restrictions weren't getting in the way of Sydney shoppers today. A frenzy at the reopening of Myer at Liverpool, stampeding virus rules.
It's not all on the retailers, it's also on the community.
A day after the Prime Minister's roadmap to ease restrictions. Other states are on board. New South Wales wants time to think about it.
Give us a break. We're just trying to make sure that you and you and you and you and everybody else are kept safe, and we will do that. We're doing it sensibly.
After the death of another resident at the Newmarch nursing home, 92-year-old Faye Rendoff had recovered from COVID, but her family says her confinement had a detrimental effect.
We understand that the person had COVID, had recovered, had other illnesses and was elderly and had died.
It follows a record number of COVID tests, over 13,600, just 5 new positive cases discovered.
Which puts us amongst one of the best jurisdictions in the world.
And has pubs calling for a windback of restrictions after 2 months of no drinks.
There is every chance the longer this goes, the more venues will never reopen their doors, and that's what our concern is.
We believe that people in New South Wales need certainty.
The Via Napoli pizzeria has turned itself into a market to survive. They desperately need a return to what they do best.
We can't wait to get back on track, to get back on what we really love to do, so having diners sitting down.
The Health Minister says it's about being steady and careful to avoid any COVID-19 outbreak, just like the one that came from the Ruby Princess cruise ship. Before the Ruby Princess debacle, a letter sent by the Home Affairs Department to federal ministers warned cruise ships were a COVID concern, alerting them to new procedures. These conditions would allow vessels with suspected COVID-19 cases to be directed to go to certain jurisdictions where enhanced controls can be applied.
We now know that the Department of Home Affairs told the government you need to have a hardened border.
The cruise ship is the subject of a commission of inquiry.
And Chris Marr joins us now from St Vincent's Hospital. Chris, good evening. Medical students are part of a new plan to tackle potential outbreaks.
Michael, it's a $13 million plan to recruit 200 final year medical students from universities. They'll work in non-COVID related wards to support staff in hospitals around the state. Now, they'll be supervised. They'll have roles such as admitting patients and taking blood, but they'll be on standby in case there's a spike in coronavirus cases if and when restrictions are eased. Michael?
Chris Marr, thank you. Well, business groups warn the economy will suffer if all states don't reopen as soon as possible. The federal government's trying to ease confusion over different rules for different regions, but insists the split between the premiers over timing is justified.
On the road to freedom with the states in the driver's seat.
One country, one direction, different speeds.
National Cabinet's 3-stage plan to ease restrictions by July and reboot the economy embraced by smaller states.
All heading towards the common goal of keeping Australians safe but getting Australians back to work.
But Victoria and New South Wales holding off for now, fueling further uncertainty.
Different states are going to want to travel at different speeds, but that could create a real problem for business.
Business groups warn inconsistencies in state restrictions will delay economic recovery.
We won't have a 2-speed economy, we'll have a 5 or 6-speed economy, and that just doesn't make sense.
Calling for schools to reopen nationally so more parents can return to work and for border restrictions to end immediately.
Getting our borders open so we can get people moving again and goods moving again.
And employers want a safety net. If Treasury's predictions the plan will restore 850,000 jobs over coming months don't eventuate. Pushing for the JobKeeper wage subsidy for workers to continue beyond the September deadline if the crisis continues, so far ruled out by the government.
This may extend towards Christmas. We don't know. We ought to have provision for that.
Labor sympathetic to a gradual phasing out.
There's a big threat if people just suddenly get cut off.
Hoping as the recovery kicks off, more jobs return. Olivia Leeming, 7 News.
The New South Wales Health Minister insists no jab, no play is absolutely the directive ahead of the NRL's planned return in just under 3 weeks. With a handful of players still refusing to get flu shots, the competition's resumption once again hangs in the balance.
Health Minister Brad Hazzard keen to have a jab at the NRL for not ensuring all players are vaccinated against the flu.
My understanding is that was certainly what was explained to the NRL, and the NRL have to make sure that they, through their contractual arrangements with their players, deliver.
Yesterday, sources told Channel 7 the flu vaccination was never a requirement of the game's return. But the Health Minister says it doesn't make sense for players to refuse the jab.
Just imagine if one player has a reduced immune system because he gets the flu, but they're highly exposed to the possibility of COVID-19, and that takes the entire team out and possibly other teams.
Manly's Dylan Walker, Marty Tapau and Adam Fanua-Blake are among the roughly 20 players opposed to being vaccinated.
I think it's a choice, and we respect that choice. It's a personal choice.
Queensland has adopted a no jab, no play policy. The Titans' Nathan Peats has now had the flu shot after being stood down. It seems it's now a state of origin between governments. If New South Wales backs down and allows unvaccinated players to take the field, they may well be banned by the Queensland government from taking part in any games across the border. The ARL Commission Chairman Peter V'landys is confident the Queensland government will relax its laws and the NRL's competition will resume on May 28. Peter Fegan, 7 News.
Australia remains hopeful an independent investigation into the outbreak is gathering global support. The European Union will push for an independent inquiry into the origins of the virus at the World Health Assembly later this month.
The world is coming together. Australia has helped lead that direction for the world.
China says it's open to a review by the World Health Organization, quote, at an appropriate time. COVID-19 restrictions have been lifted on real estate, with house hunters finally given the green light to attend inspections in person. Crowds of keen buyers returned to auctions for the first time in weeks today, snapping up properties against tough competition.
In Bosley Park, a real estate renaissance has sellers saying their prayers.
Round of applause for the highest bidder, ladies and gentlemen.
COVID restrictions relaxed, bringing the old crowds back at a safe distance to compete with new technology.
We can take it online, ladies and gentlemen. We can take it from people here.
The outcome the same for this family home in Drummoyne.
1,856,000. Sold.
They just gave birth 2 weeks ago, so it would be nice to give my son a house.
Do up his little room, get the cot built.
House values not infected by the pandemic, but there is far less for sale.
Our numbers have been down overall. We're down about half of what we were last year.
Meanwhile, there's a surplus of empty apartments. Crown's waterfall development just finished in Waterloo, turning on a 7-storey water feature. Buyers flood back.
We were getting ready that it's going to stop completely. We have 2 buyers in Wuhan who signed contracts.
For some, COVID restrictions have offered a good opportunity to innovate, to think about what the future of buying and selling a home might look like. Optus showing off virtual reality inspections.
What we're seeing here today is a perfect example of how 5G and virtual reality can totally transform the real estate sector.
The 360 teleport solution that we've created allows customers to teleport into a room in real time.
Distance no barrier for hungry buyers. Serena Andeloro, 7 News.
A boat has capsized and sunk off Sydney's northern beaches. The 2 people on board were found clinging to the upturned hull off Curl. That was around 2 o'clock this afternoon. One by one, the men were winched to the safety of the Westpac rescue chopper. The boat can be seen fully submerged. It is unable to be saved. with wreckage left floating in the water. The Australian Olympic Committee is confident the Tokyo Games will go ahead next year, even if there's no vaccine for coronavirus. The AOC President John Coates says there's no way the Games will be delayed again.
A very different annual general meeting.
Good morning, friends, one and all.
Taking place online during an uncertain time for the Olympic Games movement. Tokyo 2020 was meant to begin in just 6 weeks. Now delayed even next year isn't guaranteed, with Japan in the grips of a coronavirus lockdown and more than 16,000 cases. Many in the country warn a viable vaccine is the only way for the Games to go ahead. The AOC, though, disagrees.
We're proceeding on the basis it won't happen, but it needs to be under control, obviously.
All our team planning and work with the athletes is on the basis, as John just said, that there won't be a vaccine.
The AOC admits 2021 is now the only option for the Games, that if Japan or the world isn't ready, there can be no more delays and the Olympics would be cancelled.
There is no plan B of deferring the Games again or anything like that.
Declaring if it happens, Sydney's status as the best Olympics host is under threat.
I believe the Tokyo Olympics may ultimately be amongst the greatest Games ever, if not the greatest.
As for Queensland's bid to host the 2032 Olympics, the committee believes it may prove crucial in a post-pandemic rebound.
As a critical part of the state and nation's recovery in the short term.
Cameron Price, 7 News.
A second White House insider has been diagnosed with coronavirus, potentially exposing Donald Trump. A day after his personal valet tested positive, now it's the Vice President's press secretary, one of his closest aides.
After the President attended World War II commemorations without a mask.
If the plague ever reached them, I'd be very surprised.
The White House confirmed a second coronavirus breach. The Vice President's press secretary testing positive. Katie Miller, wife of Stephen Miller, senior advisor to Donald Trump, leaving the entire West Wing either directly or indirectly exposed to COVID-19. The staffer returned a negative result just yesterday, but began showing symptoms as she worked in the White House this morning.
She tested positive out of the blue. This is why the whole concept of tests aren't necessarily great.
But he's standing by his push to get Americans back to work.
It would happen anyway, whether you did go back to work or whether you didn't go back to work.
The nation's most populous state, California, allowing some low-risk retailers to open for contactless curbside business.
I think that we're the guinea pigs, like the people that are allowed out first. Let's see how it goes.
As some stores reopen, so too are wholesalers, like this one in downtown Los Angeles, supplying the city's flowers just in time for Mother's Day. But what we're seeing across California is barely a glimpse of normality. Schools, gyms, shopping centres and restaurants set to remain shuttered, possibly for months. In Los Angeles, Ashley Mullaney, 7 News.
A caravan suddenly caught fire in Chippendale this afternoon, large flames climbing up a nearby tree, coming frighteningly close to a block of townhouses. Firefighters, as you can see there, hosed down the burning mess. Police arrived also to close off the street and clear away onlookers. Witnesses say the fire seems suspicious. Investigations are obviously underway to see how that started. Well, the Queen has echoed Winston Churchill's historic victory speech, urging Britons to never give up and never despair. Exactly 75 years after the Nazis were defeated in World War II. There were no parties or celebrations today. However, the streets are not empty, Her Majesty said. They're filled with love.
Over lockdown London, a celebration in the skies. Red, white and blue in the air and through Britain's streets. A socially distant way to mark victory in Europe 75 years ago.
Trafalgar Square is a rallying point for many of the happy thousands who come to welcome peace.
75 years to the minute since her father, King George VI, declared victory.
We have come to the end of our tribulation.
The Queen delivered yet another extraordinary broadcast.
At the start, the outlook seemed bleak, the end distant, the outcome uncertain. Never give up, never despair. That was the message of VE Day. I vividly remember the jubilant scenes my sister and I witnessed with our parents and Winston Churchill from the balcony of Buckingham Palace.
Triumph through sacrifice over the Nazis' tyrannic rule over Europe after surviving the devastation of London during the Blitz. Prince Charles in Scotland led the tributes and 2 minutes silence as Britain paused and reflected. For many, it meant simply, solemnly, standing in the driveway. From Her Majesty.
The wartime generation knew that the best way to honour those who did not come back from the war was to ensure that it didn't happen again.
Parades and street parties were planned. It's being marked a little differently than expected. But the Queen says the way the world is meeting today's challenges is something the wartime generation would admire.
Instead, we remember from our homes and our doorsteps. But our streets are not empty. They are filled with the love and the care that we have for each other.
One way to honour the sacrifice of many. In London, Hugh Whitfield, 7 News.
Time now for a check on how weather. Brownie, good evening. Been a beautiful day.
And warm too, Michael. Yes, it's all been fuelled by a northerly breeze. Now, less than 1 degree, in fact, separated the city and Penrith, although you'll notice it was a somewhat colder start in the west, yes, first thing to this morning. Now, an active cold front has been drawing the warm air from the interior towards the coast. Instability associated with the complex cold front as it moves through has been triggering scattered showers and thunderstorms. Most of the activity has been along the ranges and the western slopes. It's been very, very cold too in the middle part of the atmosphere. That's why we're seeing snow fall at places like Thredbo, where the maximum today was only 2 degrees. Cold, dry air will fill the Sydney Basin tomorrow. We're expecting clear conditions, but the wind will pack some bite for Mother's Day, so you'll need to rug up. At the moment, though, it's dry and mild, and as you can see, most centres are reporting a temperature somewhere in the low 20s. Of course, I'll have the detailed 7-day forecast, top of the hour, Michael.
All right, Brady, thank you. A motorbike rider's been killed after a collision in Sydney's southwest. Just ahead, police appeal for witnesses of a deadly weekend crash. Father and son arrested accused of a horrific murder caught on camera. The return of last-minute shopping, final touches before a very different Mother's Day. And later, a sign of the times as our next generation of frontline heroes graduate. And in sport, Desi warns of a disaster if the NRL scraps the second ref. A man's been killed while riding his motorbike in Sydney's southwest. A Toyota Camry collided with the motorcycle outside Edmondson Park railway station. That was around midday today. The 24-year-old bike rider died at the scene. The driver of the Camry, also aged 24, was taken to hospital for mandatory drug and alcohol testing. More than 10 weeks after an unarmed black jogger was shot and killed in the United States, the father and son accused of his murder face court. Gregory and Travis McMichael were denied bail today, despite claiming the attack was a citizen's arrest gone wrong.
Walked from their Georgia home in handcuffs, a father and son accused of stalking, ambushing and murdering a stranger on his afternoon jog.
It's absolutely horrific, and Georgians deserve answers.
Answers to questions it's taken 2 months to ask. Ahmaud Arbery was killed in February, but the confronting video was only released this week. State investigators then picked up the case days later, and the McMichaels faced court today.
Within 36 hours, we had secured warrants for 2 individuals for felony murder.
It wasn't until we saw the video that they arrested them.
The district attorney accused of blocking the investigation of her friend, former police officer Gregory McMichael. He claims they suspected Arbery was a burglar and that his son Travis shot him during a struggle for his weapon.
He just was outgoing with everybody, so he just loved the people. He just didn't deserve to go out like that.
Ahmaud today honoured by runners across the country.
We run with Ahmaud
on what would have been his 26th birthday.
Happy birthday!
Happy birthday!
As calls for justice.
We will not rest until they are convicted and behind bars.
Grow louder in his hometown. In the United States, Amelia Brace, 7 News.
The original Tiger King, Roy Horn of Siegfried and Roy fame, has died after being diagnosed with coronavirus. The magicians met more than 60 years ago performing on a cruise ship and went on to become one of the biggest magic acts in the world. And that ended in 2003 when a tiger mauled Roy on a Las Vegas stage, crushing his windpipe and leaving him partially paralysed. He tested positive for COVID-19 last month, and despite reports he was responding well, his publicist says he died from complications in hospital. In a statement, his partner Siegfried says, "The world has lost one of the greats of magic, but I have lost my best friend." Roy was 75 years old. The crash victims had a second close call, shooting out of a moving ambulance on his way to hospital. Shocked drivers on the busy Bangkok street rushed to help him. Eventually, the driver realised what had happened and bustled him back into the van. The ambulance operator has apologised. Well, this is Singapore's latest weapon to police social distancing. It's a canine-like robot, aptly named Spot. It has cameras and sensors, so it can estimate the number of people gathering and warn them to disperse. That's been released in Singapore just in the past few days, which is going through a second wave of COVID-19.
For your own safety and for those around you, please stand at least 1 metre apart. Thank you.
The remote-controlled robot is part of a 2-week trial to minimise risk to police officers and reduce the strain on their resources. Well, Mother's Day tomorrow will be unlike any other, with lockdown laws still in place. We're being warned to take extra care to keep Mum safe, but there are still many ways to treat her without breaking the law.
After weeks of stalling sales, finally a bumper day.
The florists have been flat out. A lot of them had to close their internet sites. They just can't keep up.
Florist Maggie May had to shut down its website at midday after the number of orders tripled from last year.
A lot of people are coming in because obviously cafes and restaurants aren't open, so there's not the traditional Mother's Day lunch.
Irina's grandmother is in hospital. She's hoping these flowers will lift her spirits.
So how will you give the flowers?
I'll have to send a photo.
A different Mother's Day too for the grandmothers of this family, who are both interstate.
We're going to use social media this year to send a beautiful message from their grandkids.
While restrictions are slowly being eased across New South Wales, the advice is still to stay away from the vulnerable and the elderly. So many people are looking for colourful ways to brighten up the day for their mums and grandmothers tomorrow.
I know it's tough. It's really tough. To not be able to hug your mum or kiss your mum.
With restaurants and cafes closed, cooking is at an all-time high.
Lamb's always a special, but roast pork's been going off.
Bars are offering mums take-home hampers.
We're selling Mother's Day hampers. We're doing a Mother's Day barbecue with chocolate brownies.
While the kids are making sure mum still feels special on her big day.
Happy Mother's Day!
Although sometimes the best laid plans can get a little stuck.
Old mate trying to make her cake and she's got a beater stuck in her hair.
Samantha Brett, 7 News.
There are fresh concerns about a second wave of coronavirus in Europe. Up next, COVID time bomb, the scenes that have Italy bracing for more devastation. Stalked by a shark, a surfer fights back but doesn't escape unscathed. Down but not out, a stranded climber rescued from a Sydney cliff to the cheers of locals. And heading home, some of our most vulnerable bushfire victims finally on the mend. That's next. One man is dead and another's been charged after a shocking accident in Sydney's east yesterday. There was chaos at the East Gardens intersection where an SUV and scooter collided. The 29-year-old scooter rider was taken to hospital where he died last night. The 22-year-old driver was arrested and charged with negligent driving occasioning death. He'll face court in July. A helicopter rescue's been launched off Vaucluse to save a rock climber who fell from the cliffs near Diamond Bay. The man in his 20s injured his legs and couldn't get out. The response drawing quite a crowd to the park there. Back on firm ground, he was transferred to an ambulance, giving spectators a little wave as they cheered him on.
Are you okay? Yes. Good.
Yeah. Clearly, a bit of a smile there. He's in a stable condition, a bit shaken up though. Well, the violent past of a man wanted for the murder of his 26-year-old girlfriend in Melbourne has been revealed. Ricardo Barbaro had only just been released from prison for assaulting Ellie Price when her body was found inside her home. Police across Australia are searching for the fugitive, who has extensive organised crime connections. A furious Italian mayor has threatened to reinforce lockdown measures after hundreds of young people flocked to bars in Milan within days of being allowed out of quarantine. Virologists have described the city as a coronavirus time bomb.
Being socially distant goes against the Italian culture, but in a region accounting for half the country's 30,000 deaths, the mayor thought they'd try harder than this.
There are moments when it is time to get off, and this is one of those moments. The images from yesterday are shameful.
Everyone else thinks so too.
They want to open before us. This is not good for all the Italy and Europe.
Restaurants here can still only do takeaway. Luigi established his in the 90s after being a microbiologist for 40 years. The 70-year-old has been in the kitchen every day of the pandemic. Above all, I do it because for me this job is like loving a beautiful woman, he says. I'll never leave it. But other business owners could have no choice. Potential customers wary of a new wave of contagion. Many countries around the world will be watching Italy closely over the coming week to see if the easing of restrictions has any impact on the infection rate. The next round of reopenings is on the 18th of May, when the faithful will once again be able to attend public masses. From Monday, France will start coming to life after 8 weeks of bare streets, and in the Netherlands, students will return to their desks, albeit from behind perspex screens. New chapters in places with such history. In Rome, Sarah Greenolch, 7 News.
A surfer's told how he fought off a shark, claiming he punched it in the head after it bit him. The swell looked calm, but Dylan Nacass was screaming after the shark launched onto his leg, then followed him towards shore.
The shark is fast, take my leg fast, I punch him one time, two times, and after I'm scared when he turned around me, I'm really scared.
Dylan escaped with just a few stitches, and the video his mate filmed from the cliff top. Well, some of the koalas rescued during last summer's deadly bushfires have been nursed back to health thanks to a lot of donations from right around the world. Thousands, as we know, died in the fires, but the lucky few are finally getting ready to head back to the bush.
Most weren't expected to survive, but look at them now.
You can notice already around the ears he's starting to grow that fur back. That's what was singed during the bushfires.
Thousands of koalas perished in the fires. These are the lucky ones.
You can only fathom the trauma that they've gone through. You know, to get to this point of recovery is quite significant.
This is Frankie. The 2-year-old koala was rescued from fire-ravaged Malakuta. He was treated at Hillsville Sanctuary in Victoria for burns on his feet and ears. He'd also suffered smoke inhalation.
A lot of them had burns to their pads of their limbs, singed fur, some toenail injuries which prevented them from climbing higher through the trees.
The koalas have now been moved to Phillip Island. World Wildlife Fund donated $20,000 to build enclosures so they can continue their recovery.
They're starting to climb again. They're starting to move through the enclosure nice and freely and just acting like a koala.
They're getting stronger too. Almost all of the koalas will be released back into the wild in spring.
I think it's just going to be an extraordinary, happy moment to get them back to the wild where they belong, to give them that second chance of freedom.
Melina Saris, 7 News.
Well, bars are off limits, but Saturday night cocktails are still on the menu. After the break, the delivery service shaking up local business. Australian breakthrough, how an arthritis drug could help critically ill COVID patients. Fighting the virus, our next generation of paramedics graduate at a distance.
Warm and sunny today, chilly for Mother's Day. Details soon.
Australian scientists are starting human trials on an arthritis drug to see if it could help critically ill COVID-19 patients. Tocilizumab is an anti-inflammatory used to treat rheumatoid arthritis. It's hoped the drug could stop the infection attacking the lungs and save lives.
Once patients are in intensive care, we know that they do have a very high mortality. So we hope that this drug will reduce the risk of patients dying.
The trial will involve patients from a number of Brisbane hospitals. The prized first pair of Michael Jordan's namesake sneakers have hit the market. The well-worn black, white and red shoes are signed by the basketball legend. Now, they're being sold off to mark the 35th anniversary of the popular Air Jordan brand. And believe it or not, they're expected to fetch an eye-watering $230,000 at an online auction. Bars and clubs are set to remain closed for the time being, but a new online platform is helping breathe some life into the struggling industry. Shaken, Not Broken offers a variety of cocktails delivered on demand, with hundreds of venues already signed up. But we're being warned not to go overboard.
For those in the bar business, COVID-19 has hit hard. Restrictions forcing them to call last drinks and close their doors.
It's pretty much what we live and breathe to do. So not being able to open the doors is obviously quite tough.
But a new online platform, Shaken Not Broken, is aiming to lift their spirits. Owners now mixing it up and providing cocktails on demand.
And really help them deliver an income stream that will see them through to the other side of this.
The site allows you to search for your favourite local or bars within your postcode, with drinks delivered straight to your door.
If you want a Negroni, if you want an old-fashioned, whatever cocktail you want, they're there to be collected.
And having a platform like this, it takes a lot of stress off.
More than 200 bars and venues across the country have already registered their interest, keen to share their own creative concoctions with those at home. And while it's convenient, Australians are being reminded to use this service responsibly.
Often in cocktails we can have many standard drinks hidden within one alcoholic beverage. So it is important just to be mindful.
The official advice: adults shouldn't have more than 10 standard drinks a week and no more than 4 each day. Amber Laidler, 7 News.
There was a road hazard with a difference in Melbourne this morning. A piggy in the middle of a busy tunnel. Drivers had to dodge the hog and police were called in to help the owner bring home the bacon. I didn't write that. There's a real strength in numbers as our frontline response to coronavirus continues to grow. Still to come, our first COVID class of graduates. We're there as a history-making group of paramedics prepared to fight the health crisis head-on. Don't miss that story soon here on 7 News. But first, Mel is back with Sport. Mel, good evening to you. Finally, there's on-field matters to discuss in the NRL.
Michael, hallelujah. As the restart date draws closer, potential rule changes and the number of refs are some big talking points. More details up next. Plus, the football world rejoices as the K-League finally brings some live action to our screens. But it was a tough day for one Aussie. And we chat exclusively with the very open Jason Day on his personal battles and what's driving him to get back to the best in the world. Welcome back. With the footy's return looming, it's never felt so good to debate the merits of the two-referee system. We even got to do it with Des Hasler over Zoom today. The NRL is considering going back to one ref to cut costs.
Let's call it making policy on the run. Is that a fair comment? I think we could then get a lot more penalties, and I think the game would be slowed down.
Roosters coach Trent Robinson is on the Project Apollo committee planning the NRL's restart.
Any rule change that you make on the ruck will have the biggest significant change in our game.
Coaches are still waiting for the new draw as broadcast negotiations drag on. Football Federation Australia boss James Johnson says the A-League could resume as early as July. August looms as a more likely restart date due to the difficulty of getting foreign players and coaches who've returned home back into Australia.
We would like to have as many of the players and coaches that are currently abroad back on our shores when we would resume.
It's likely all teams will be based in a Sydney isolation hub for the final 5 rounds of the season and finals. And Korea's K-League became the centre of the football universe with the start of its season overnight. The grandstands were empty, but fans were allowed to gather in sports bars. It featured Socceroos Adam Taggart and Terry Antonis, who was given a straight red card for this tackle.
Unfortunate, but he'll pick himself up, and I'm sure that he'll have a good season.
Their team, the Suwon Blue Wings, lost 1-0 to the champions, John Book Motors. Well, there may not be an athlete anywhere who'll take more advantage from the pandemic and forced suffocation of sport than Jason Day. His tumble from golf's world number 1 has been painful in every sense.
They're images which had every golf fan wincing.
Oh, really?
10 times he's quit PGA Tour events, crippled with back pain.
It can be hard mentally and physically.
Exacerbated by knowledge that for a year he sat atop golf's throne, world number 1, a breakthrough major.
A phenomenal talent.
Hoisting trophy after trophy, Sports A-List wanted part of it. Golfing royalty was swept up. Little did they know he was racked with doubt.
Because I feel like I'm too young to retire because of my back.
As mum's cancer battle consumed his thoughts, Day endured cortisone, epidurals, injections to 7 nerves in his back. Little wonder COVID-19's had a silver lining. Family time, rest, rehab.
Feeling a lot better, which has been great.
For the first time in ages, nightmares have become reverie.
You know, waking up one day and looking back and going, wow, you know, I remember having a sore back, but I don't have a sore back anymore.
Inspired by Tiger's resurgence and driven by his countrymen who pre-pandemic revelled in a stunning start to the golfing year, Day's acutely aware it's 734 days since his last win and he's now ranked 51.
I'm not happy with myself if I'm not inside the top 10 in the world.
That's not all.
Yeah, I definitely want to be world number 1 again.
With a compressed schedule awaiting the PGA Tour resumption, the Masters is in November, just as Day turns 33.
I think that would be about the best birthday present I could ever ask for. So, you know, fingers crossed, mate.
If that's to happen, he'll need just a few more of these.
Come on now. Oh, my goodness. This guy is sensational.
Hopefully Jason Day, Mark 2, is even better. Pat Welch, 7 News.
Yeah, we certainly hope so. Well, the guru behind 2 of Aussie sport's dominant recent reigns is now helping our Olympians navigate uncertain futures. Emma Murray unlocked the potential of AFL Kings Richmond and Supercars whiz Scott McLaughlin. In a rare interview, she shares her secrets with us.
Whether it's triathlete Ash Gentle at home in the garden,
this is a flat-stemmed wattle.
Surfer Gillian Wilson staying sharp in his garage, or slalom sensation Jess Fox in her backyard, juggling the mental shock of a postponed Tokyo Games, has challenged them all.
It's all about getting creative with my workouts, working on other areas and different skills that I can develop.
The AOC ran webinars to help and introduced our Olympic hopefuls to a mindfulness coach with a magic touch.
When I talk about optimism, it's saying, you know, this is hard, but I can work a way forward.
Sceptical? Ask Dustin Martin and the Richmond Tigers.
Dustin just nails it.
Premiers twice in 3 years. When Scott McLaughlin broke through for his first Supercars title in 2018, the first person he called, Emma Murray. He's hardly lost a race since.
My work is really just about removing the blocks that are stopping athletes from being able to bring their best to the moment.
Her experience varies from clinical psychotherapy to having her talented sporting son Will paralysed by a broken neck.
I've been teaching people to use the breath as a way to becoming into the present moment.
Murray's methods can help us all.
On my Instagram, I've tried to do actual exercises that go for about 3 to 5 minutes that are around that breath and that checking on thoughts and catching our attention.
With everything, Fox is learning fast.
Enjoy being outside and breathing that fresh air, and it's amazing how much I'm grateful for these simple things.
Matt Carmichael, 7 News.
Well, there's a new favourite for this year's Melbourne Cup after today's South Australian Derby. Russian Camelot sat 3 wide all the way, but didn't mind at all.
In front, Russian Camelot from Dalasan, and he's king of the castle, Russian Camelot.
Still 6 months before the Cup, punters are already backing Danny O'Brien's English-bred colt. Jockey John Allen spent 2 weeks in quarantine to ride Russian Camelot today. Well, there will be absolutely no social distancing inside the Octagon tomorrow when UFC makes its return in Florida. Americans Justin Gaethje and Tony Ferguson will clash in their headlining lightweight bout. No spectators are allowed, but a huge sports-starved television audience is expected. And Taiwan is the envy of sports fans around the world because they're letting spectators back into baseball stadiums. After passing temperature checks, 1,000 fans were let in to sit at least 1 metre apart. It's business as usual for the cheerleaders, but soldiers wore hazmat suits to sing the national anthem. It's almost strange, Michael, to see some fans back there. I don't know about how the cheerleaders might feel, though. They don't need to wear any masks or anything, but everyone else has to.
Seem to have, Strange scenes there.
But
All
good
right,
to
Mel.
see it back with fans.
Yeah, it is indeed. All right, thanks, Mel.
Thanks.
Well, the frontline fight against coronavirus became a little stronger today with hundreds of new paramedics hitting the road. It is the biggest single intake the New South Wales Ambulance has ever had, and they're getting ready for a potential second wave.
An army in blue. This is our state's newest frontline, close to 200 paramedic recruits, the first Corona class of 2020.
These are truly historic and extraordinary times that we live in.
They had yesterday to celebrate. Today, most started work.
Despite the fact that we were all physically distanced apart and not able to interact a lot together, it is what made our bond kind of a lot more special and unique than I think it would have been in normal circumstances.
There wasn't much normal for what is the biggest graduating class in New South Wales ambulance history. They trained at Penrith's closed St Dominic's College so they could all keep their distance.
It's the second largest ambulance service in the world that you are joining today. I'm profoundly proud of the organisation and its people.
And they're still growing. The service's highly coveted intake rounds were moved forward in preparation for any potential virus surge. Overnight, 430 new paramedics in total graduated, and within a fortnight, every one will be on a new front line. Emma Dallymore, 7 News.
Crowds in California defied stay-at-home orders to watch a natural neon show at the beach. The blue, bioluminescent waves, often called a sea sparkle, are caused by an algal bloom of phytoplankton which light up at night. Happens every few years along southern California's coastline. Well, David's back and he has the very latest forecast now. Brownie, hello again. Been a beautiful day.
Oh, indeed, Michael, but I think we've seen the last of the warm weather for some time. And, of course, I'll have your forecast straight after the break.
Tonight's 7 News headlines. Boxing Day style crowds have packed into shops as they start reopening across Sydney despite no relaxation of social distancing laws. 2 men have been winched to safety after their boat capsized off Curl. The Australian Olympic Committee insists the Tokyo Games will go ahead next year, even without a coronavirus vaccine. And florists have had their busiest day in years as people find ways to spoil mum tomorrow on a very different Mother's Day. Now, here's Brownie with the weather.
Thanks very much, Michael. Well, it's been a warm day. We've had the odd, fast-moving, thundery shower pop up around about mid-afternoon as forecast, but a cold air mass, well, that's heading our way. The city cracked 27 degrees leading up to 2 o'clock this afternoon. As we go into the suburbs, you'll notice mid-20s were popular, a little bit cooler high in the Blue Mountains. From the satellite, this frontal complex, as we can see here, is driving a mixture of scattered showers and thunderstorms, mainly along the ranges and the adjoining western slopes. It's been snowing on the southern ranges today. In fact, our weather camera in Albury captured this. We're looking at frequent showers passing through, some thunderstorms as well. Of course, those showers fell as snow on the Alps above 1,200 metres. Cold air is now expected to fill the Sydney Basin tomorrow in the lee of the Central Highlands. This vigorous west to southwesterly airstream will gradually moderate as the day wears on. But if you interstate tomorrow, warm and sunny weather is expected, of course. On the other side of this change, the cold air won't get into Brisbane. 29 degrees in Melbourne. It's cold and wet. Yes, a top of only 15 degrees. Perth, sunshine at around 23 degrees. Now, for us, a strong mid-morning covers most of our coast tomorrow. We'll see some snow showers falling across the alpine peaks. A few more showers along the southwest slopes as well. Apart from that, fine and sunny conditions, but it will be a cold day for most of the state. Of course, that includes our backyard as well. This is the forecast for Mother's Day. High wind chill throughout the day, so yes, you will need to rug up. And as we go to the coast, we're expecting rough seas with this strong westerly wind eventually giving way to a southwesterly change of a similar strength during the afternoon. For the city, sunshine tomorrow, high wind chill from time to time, especially from late morning into the mid-afternoon. A top there of only 19 degrees, and check out the comfort guy, he's rugged up. Let's move on to that 7-day outlook now. The cold winds will ease come Monday. Yes, clear skies around 19 degrees. It should be a touch warmer on Tuesday. Unsettled later in the week, might see some coastal showers. So a chilly one for Mother's Day tomorrow, Michael.
All right, Brownie, thank you for that. And that is 7 News for this Saturday. The latest is next with Mel Doyle. For now, though, I'm Michael Usher. From all of us here, thank you so much for your company. Have a great Saturday night. Melbourne.